So motor-mouth US President Donald Trump has been humbled by Iran once again. That's because the deranged occupant of the White House is facing humiliation in the Strait of Hormuz. Several Iranian-linked ships have passed through this crucial waterway, despite the US military yesterday announcing the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. And if this wasn't enough, there are reports of China even considering to send its warships to Iran to escort its oil tankers. This would be the broad focus of my video today. Also in this video, an emotional scene from Uzbekistan as an Iranian athlete wins a gold medal in the World Junior Taekwondo Championship, even though Iran faces atrocities by the US and Israeli terrorists at home. So please stay tuned. So Trump imposed a blockade of the Strait of Hormuz yesterday. This was the first time anyone had used a method of blocking the same waterway that he wanted to open. Now you realize why I call this man the deranged occupant of the White House. Well, now even American lawmakers are addressing him using the same term. That's the power of you lovely people. The popularity of this channel, all because of you, are making even American policymakers see the true colors of this man. But I'll come to this in a bit. Let's first return to the drama unfolding in the Strait of Hormuz. Not that I was surprised, but the news is that several ships linked to Iran and China have passed through this crucial waterway despite the US military announcing its blockade. At least 4 of them were Iranian ships and 3 of them Chinese. Yes, 7 of them have passed through that waterway. In fact, 2 of these 3 Chinese ships were sanctioned by the Americans way back in 2023. Don't take my word for it. Watch this Al Jazeera broadcast. And by the way, Al Jazeera is owned by Qatar and not Iran.
Yeah, we understand that there is a Chinese ship that's been sanctioned by the US passing through the Strait of Hormuz. Are you hearing anything in Beijing about that?
That's right, the Starry Rich, which is a mid-sized oil tanker. Interestingly, it's a Malawi-flagged ship, although it is quite clearly owned by China, and it also broadcasts its own signals as being affiliated with China. We know that it left Dubai yesterday on Monday and actually stopped before the US trade blockade was announced, and it actually went to do a U-turn, and then it continued through the Strait of Hormuz, and we know it was the first vessel to pass through the strait since the blockade was imposed on Tuesday. Now, interestingly, as you mentioned, it was actually sanctioned in 2023 by the US for evading its sanctions on Iran. And so really its passage through the strait raises more questions than it provides answers.
That's the disdain the Chinese have for this Israeli lapdog. They decided to show the middle finger to the US military by passing the ships that the US had already sanctioned in 2023. There was no doubt in anyone's mind that the US military wouldn't be able to, in fact, it wouldn't have courage to stop the Chinese ships, let alone attacking them. Watch this BBC News Night broadcast to understand the Chinese might vis-a-vis the US military.
Interesting, Vic, to hear Tom talking about the Chinese element to this, because I was speaking to a senior source in the UK defence establishment, and I said, look, is this blockade of the Strait of Hormuz, is it realistic? And this person basically guffawed and said, well, if the United States is willing to shoot at Chinese oil tankers, are they willing to do that? Well, you don't need to be a geopolitical scientist to understand that China is one of 5 permanent members of the Security Council at the UN and is a nuclear armed power. So what seems to be going on is that Donald Trump, clearly they hadn't expected that Iran was going to be able to close off the Strait of Hormuz, hence the negotiations. He is now wanting to sort of come back with his idea, but here's this pretty senior UK defence establishment source basically saying it's not realistic. In terms of this country, Keir Starmer is saying that the UK is not going to be part of this blockade, but he is convening international leaders later this week with President Macron of France to try and help if there is an agreement to stabilise the Strait of Hormuz.
Sir Bernard Jenkins, what do you...
But wait, Trump's humiliation isn't complete yet. Now the BBC is reporting that China may send its warships to the Strait of Hormuz to escort their oil tankers from Iran. Imagine Trump wanted to end the Iranian control of the Strait of Hormuz and deprive the Iranians of this crucial income. Given that an overwhelming majority of the Iranian oil export goes to China, this ends stopping now. If anything, it is further fueling the rise in oil prices globally. No wonder more and more Americans are now calling out this war criminal's thuggery. I'm talking about Donald Trump. Listen to Democratic Senator Mark Kelly on Fox.
Adam, let me be pretty blunt. The American people are poorer and less safe because of this president. He got us into a conflict without a strategic goal, without a plan, without a timeline, without an exit strategy. And at this point, he is just flailing. Tried to get us out through a negotiation the other day. The vice president spent 21 hours, and at the end of that negotiation, I understand that the president was at a UFC fight, enjoying the evening with his Secretary of State. In what world does that make sense? That's how serious he is taking this. We have 13 dead Americans. We have 13 families out there that don't have fathers and mothers and brothers and sisters. There are 150 dead Iranian kids and probably in excess of another 1,000 Iranian civilians needlessly killed. Our magazine depths are somewhat depleted. Pack 3 rounds for SM-3s, THAAD rounds, or pack for Patriots, SM-3 rounds, THAAD rounds, other munitions. We've spent billions of dollars, and this president does not have a plan. And now his latest thing is he's going to completely close the Strait of Hormuz and continue to drive up energy costs and food costs for the American people.
Then the ABC reported this. According to its broadcast, the Trump administration is facing pressure to end its stupid and illegal blockade of the Strait of Hormuz.
US blockade, as you say, now in place, and amid efforts to restart peace talks, oil and gas prices remaining high.
This morning, the US Navy blockading Iran. 16 US warships are now enforcing President Trump's order to stop all ships entering or departing Iranian ports and coastal areas. 2 tankers under US sanctions turning around as the restrictions went into effect. The rich Starry, though, now appears to have successfully made it through the Strait of Hormuz, one of 3 ships to cross today. But now, the Wall Street Journal reporting that Saudi Arabia is reportedly warning the US that Iran may retaliate by cutting off oil transport in the Red Sea, a waterway for Saudi Arabia's oil exports. This coming as it appears the US and Iran could be trying to head back to the negotiating table for another round of talks before the end of the 2-week ceasefire. Overnight, Vice President J.D. Vance, who led the failed negotiations over the weekend, insisting progress was made.
The big question from here on out is whether the Iranians will have enough flexibility, whether the Iranians will accept the critical things that we need to see in order for things to get done.
President Trump saying talks broke down over Iran's nuclear ambitions. And now he's threatening to seize Iran's highly enriched uranium one way or another.
Iran will not have a nuclear weapon, and we're going to get the dust back. We'll get it back either. We'll get it back from them or we'll take it.
A source familiar with the negotiations telling ABC News the US has now proposed a 20-year suspension to Iran's nuclear program, rather than the permanent end the administration has insisted on earlier. According to the New York Times, Iran's countered with an offer of a 5-year suspension, though there's no word on the administration's response. Since the start of the war, the president promised this conflict would last only 4 or 5 weeks. Now, with the war entering its 7th week, a fragile ceasefire is in place as oil and gas prices remain high, with no relief in sight.
Well, Secretary of State Marco Rubio taking part in talks in Washington, D.C. today between Lebanon and Israel to try and bring about a ceasefire there. Meanwhile, a Pakistani security official telling ABC News no fixed date, no venue set for any resumption of talks between the US and Iran.
As I said before, Trump's problem is that he is desperately trying to find an honorable exit, but is unable to do so because the Iranians are in no mood to provide him one. Now, instead of calling the end of his illegal military campaign against Iran, he keeps pulling himself deep into a quagmire with more crazy decisions. His utterances against the Pope and social media posts depicting himself as Christ can be seen in this context. No wonder even American lawmakers are calling Trump deranged. This is Senator Chris Van Hollen.
And now we see the same president who attacked the Pope putting images of himself online as if he's Christ. This is a deranged man. This is a man that should have no connection to being commander-in-chief. It's a man who's putting Americans at risk, people around the world at risk. And so I just want to say, along with my colleagues, when you're looking at a president who's so unhinged, why is it we can only find one Senate Republican, Rand Paul, to say no, to say they're going to exercise their constitutional responsibilities and make sure we end this illegal war that is making us less safe.
Insulting Christians was the last nail in the coffin for Trump. His advisors may try to give as much spin as they want, but this has upset a lot of his Christian MAGA supporters. So not only has he failed in every single so-called objective against Iran militarily, but he has also ended up making Iran even stronger through his illegal military adventurism. And add to that the widespread discontent within his support base in the US. I will leave you with this emotional clip from Tashkent, one of my favorite holiday destinations. This was the moment the camera captured the raising of the Iranian national flag following a gold medal victory by Mohammad Irfan Khodai at the 15th World Taekwondo Junior Championship in Uzbekistan. For all you know, this junior athlete may have suffered a lot in the recent terrorism unleashed by the US and Israeli monsters. And yet, this didn't stop this child from stamping his country's authority at this prestigious global event. In this video, the head of the Taekwondo Federation can be seen giving a military salute as the national anthem of Iran is played to celebrate the Iranian gold medal victory. That's it from me. Thank you very much for your support of this platform and our journalism. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do so, because that's one of the many ways you can support independent journalism. God bless you all.